Welcome to the 8th video from the seminar on using social media as an academic. In this one, we're going to talk about the dissemination of our work. If you're working in research, and as academic, you're obviously working in research. One of the most important stages of academic research is disseminating the results. So the thing is that with dissemination, we usually think about publications, that is, journal and conference papers, posters, articles, and so on. But the thing is that publication just means making something public. In this case, the knowledge you have discovered, the knowledge you have created. So the thing is that in this second decade of the 21st century, making knowledge public necessarily involves social media. So using social media to disseminate the results of your research, of your work, is not tooting your own horn. It's part of your job. Indeed, I told you in the previous video that you were going to learn about the usernames or Twitter handles of plenty of researchers from their papers because it's part of the contact information. Very recently, from my point of view, maybe not yours, on early 2022, this researcher was about a journal asking to provide a Twitter thread about the paper, just in case the paper was going to be accepted. So the thing is that journals are increasingly see the potential of social media to make that research they're publishing even more visible. Needless to say, using social media for result dissemination has pros and cons. Okay, the most obvious advantage is that you're going to make that knowledge public faster. You don't even need to wait for peer review. And of course, you're going to reach much larger audiences. If by disseminating results we only think about journals, conferences, and so on, it's obvious that that knowledge is going to go to the broad public much later. But if you go directly to social media, where the public, the press, the politicians are there, the that knowledge you are producing, that knowledge you are spreading, disseminating, is going to reach them much faster. Needless to say, since you are skipping most of the gatekeepers, even peer review, you can disseminate work that has not been thoroughly verified. Okay? My point of view here is that this is not much different from the problem we have with preprints, but it may be, I can accept that, the social media may have make this a bit worse, because using social media to disseminate results from preprints that have not undergone peer review and are not really that finished product, it may be a huge problem, as we have seen with the COVID-19 pandemic and that uh, avalanche of preprints that were reaching the press through social media. The thing is that in order to disseminate your results in social media, probably you can get some advice, and here I'm using 10 principles about good scientific dissemination that I published more than a decade ago. Of course, here what I'm doing is applying my mantra: recycle your work, reuse your work. So I went to check this, which is obviously on my blog, and it's still very valid for discussing your work in social media. So there we go. First, you should describe recent or ongoing research, research that is going to help contribute to build your reputation. This is highly related with something that we're going to discuss later, the personal brand that you are going to build. You are going to have a reputation on a field. So you should discuss mainly research that is related to that market you are trying to to place yourself in. Capture the attention of your audience immediately. That's crucial. I told you when discussing my own videos that just 15% of the people reach the end of the video. So there's something that I'm doing quite poorly with those videos because I'm not getting them. Okay, so you need to get your audience from the very beginning. So probably that's starting with the very title of your uh, publication of your paper. You need to start from a sound core idea and then you describe interesting results. But you have to get to the point. You cannot simply digress and add plenty of additional information that it's interesting just for you. You should recognize prior work, but make the novelty of your approach stand out. Okay? So here you have to balance. You know that nothing has been done on a vacuum in research. But of course, you're not going to provide a related work section, but you can mention, you can cite other people. If they are on Twitter, this is a really good way of trying to weave that collaboration network. Look, I'm doing things that are very related to your prior work, and I'm recognizing that here, but this is my novel idea. This is how I'm doing that in a different way. You have to be memorable. People need to remember you. If what you're telling is really interesting, but they are going to forget that in 10 minutes, you have done a work that is useless for you. You have to be also relevant to your audience. That is, it's not writing a Twitter thread for the sake of it. You need to provide something that is relevant for the people that are using Twitter and are following you. You're not writing for your colleagues, you're not writing for a journal, you're writing for a bunch of different people. Some of them can be professionals, some of them can be researchers, some of them can be journalists. So you have to provide something that is immediately interesting, relevant, and useful for them. It's not simply a summary of your paper, of your project. It's what's this meaning for your audience in Twitter, which is the broad public. You have to be approachable. By approachable I mean that you should be open to interact with people asking questions, but you should also be providing easy ways to reach you outside Twitter. That's why the personal website is important. So if, for instance, a journalist wants to interview you on that research, it doesn't take a long time for that person to find how to reach you. Okay? If you remember the personal website, I told you that you need to provide contact details. In contact details, a phone, even in this second decade of the 21st century, is really important, especially for journalists. They like phones, right? Um, Dissemination is a continuous work. This is for that people that have a Twitter account and they tweet about, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 times a year. Each time they have a paper. They can be getting something, obviously, from being on Twitter. They are consuming Twitter, but they are not exploiting Twitter in their own benefit because they could do much more from that. And for a person following someone that is just tweeting 3 times a year probably doesn't make sense, especially if it's just here we have a new paper, you have here a link, and then you go to the link and the paper is paywalled. it's useless. So the thing is that dissemination takes much more. And I'm not trying to push you too hard to do this, but the thing is that you should try to go a little beyond just putting a tweet with a link to your paywall paper. You should try to do something a bit different, and you should try to provide a bit more on the platform. And you have to adapt to the medium. You cannot simply try to write a summary of your paper or pick up phrases, sentences from the paper and just paste them on Twitter. No, it's a different medium, and you need to learn how to use that medium. Okay? Regarding being memorable, that starts from the very beginning. And here I have one of my most favorite examples, as you may guess, is something I've done. And this is a preprint that I wrote 10 years ago, almost. Um, 10 years ago, it was really popular to try to see if we could predict elections using Twitter. Okay? You counted the tweets mentioning one candidate and you computed the votes that candidate was going to get. Maybe the idea seems a bit stupid because it's not the most advanced technique in the world, but the thing is that it was popular. People were trying once and again to do that. Some of them were getting it right, some of them were getting it wrong. So the thing is that basically it worked by chance. And in that year I wrote a rant about this. I tried to be objective, I tried to be informative, and I tried to be funny. And it seems that I was able to do that. So I remember those t-shirts about something like my mother-in-law was in Paris and all I got was this Lucy t-shirt. So I write that as a title, and actually it fitted in on a tweet, and it was true because I started on that not because I wanted to criticize people. I started on that field because I really wanted to predict the elections. But in the end, I only got that preprint. Okay, so I submit the preprint to Archive, and of course I post something on my blog and I tweet about that, and it was pretty amazing. People loved the paper. They were talking about the paper on May, June, September, even 2013, 2014, 2017. People is still loving that title. So the thing is that I got it with being memorable. And now the thing is that you have that preprint about can you predict elections with using tweets? And now you have people tweeting about papers. So it's not difficult to see that someone thought about can we use tweets mentioning papers to measure their impact? And the thing is that there is plenty of literature about that. The relation between tweets citing papers and actual citations for those papers is complicated, to say the least. And actually, the thing is that half of the papers that were tweeted about are not visited, never. That is, you write a tweet with a link and people are not clicking on the link. So for those of you that were doing that, people are not clicking on your links. Maybe it's because most of the time they go there and it's paywall, so it makes little sense to follow the link. It could be. But the thing that the relation is complicated, and there are some platforms computing all metrics on the impact of scientific publications, and several publishers are providing these metrics with each publication. So the thing is that remember that in the first video of this series we were talking about prestige we were talking about reputation, and I was telling you that prestige and reputation are based on publicity, that is, on working on something that is public, is well known to everybody. So it makes perfect sense to take tweets that are public to try to measure something regarding publications, right? So the thing is that it doesn't matter you are tweeting or not tweeting about your papers. Someone is measuring that as a proxy for your impact. Now, maybe you understand that academic persona, the uncontainable self, and the digital footprint. It doesn't matter you are not on Twitter, on ResearchGate, you don't have a website. If you are publishing, someone is measuring altmetrics for you. Someone is measuring if you are making an impact on Twitter or not. So, if you don't tweet about your own papers, why should other people do that? Needless to say, this is complex, this has advantages, downsides, and we didn't discuss this on the part devoted to reasons to not use social media. I said that people maybe were going to tell you that it's childish or it's demeaning for your work. In this case, they can say that it's banal, okay? It's empty. And we have this strip from Tom Gold. It's all very well making discoveries, saving lives and improving the world, Roger, but you're making no impact on social media. So I'm not saying that it's good. I'm not saying that just trying to get clickbait on Twitter for your papers is good. Actually, it's bad. But the thing is that by blindly believing in working hard and exploiting your talent, you're going to be valued. It's a bit naive. Okay, you need to be visible. Now, regarding altmetrics, what about that preprint? Well, the numbers in altmetric are huge. Actually, it's in the top 5% of papers scored in the platform. And according to Google Scholar, it has a quite nice bunch of citations. Obviously, some of you may say, look, Danny, I don't really think that we should measure people according to citations and so on. But the thing is that we're doing that. So maybe it's wrong, maybe it's problematic. I'm not saying it's a good metric, but most of us are being measured according to that. We're publishing in journals according to their impact factor and things like that. So in this case, it makes quite of sense. So I took another paper which has a much higher number of citations, and that metric is terrible. So probably here, the difference between one and the other is not the quality of the paper, but the catchy title. So the thing is that here I'm not saying that you need to use tricks or you need to have to become experts in clickbait. What I'm saying is that if you develop nice research, sound research with interesting results, but somehow you're providing that in a very blunt form, it's not going to stand out. It's not going to be different from other research which is as good as yours and has a bit more catchy title or a bit more catchy poster. Okay, so the thing is that you simply cannot do good work. You have to do good work and you need to be memorable, right? But the thing is that regarding our altmetrics, they are quite noisy. They are not really providing signal, and I think that you shouldn't really worry about them too much. But be aware that altmetrics are being computed for your papers no matter you are on social media or not. right? Now, the thing is that in the next video, we're going to discuss how to improve your visibility. We're going to discuss why visibility is crucial, if I wasn't able to convince you right now, and how to build up that visibility and try to understand what we can do to increase our audience.